That's good stuff.
And we're live.
Keep explaining, Ben.
So yeah, it essentially
you are explaining to me now what HR1 is.
Correct.
Good.
So this is what they're calling election reform, and it would, as like I said a minute ago, it would nationalize all of the shenanigans from November. So
you would nationalize them and say that they were legitimate.
Correct. And so no more voter ID laws.
Well, let's get into that in a second, because if you just tuned in, well, no, you didn't just tune in, but if you did just tune in, you are listening to The World according to Ben Stein. I want to welcome everybody that's listening to the YouTube chat. We thank you for your comments. We are humbly grateful for them. And we're honored with all the downloads through all the various different streams and the 10 different, I think, continents. No, it's not continents, but definitely 10
wait a minute. We're not Democrats. We don't think there are 10 continents.
10 different countries we are being across the world. 52 and it's very exciting when you see, people in Australia and Germany listening to you, Ben Stein, and Romania. Go figure. People in Romania.
I have tried to tell this over and over again. Ploesti was one of the most important cities in World War II because it was the only region in Western Europe that had significant amounts of oil, and was very important for Hitler.
The more you know with Ben Stein, America's teacher. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for listening. And of course, we're joined tonight by former Fox News everything, Ken LaCourte, who runs Media Action Network. In one quick sentence, Ken, what does Media Action Network do?
You're tired of just bitching about the liberal media and want to kick them back right in the gonads? We're the place to be.
That's the perfect mission statement. And of course, managing editor of American Greatness. He's a great man himself, Ben Boychuk. Welcome back as always, Ben.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Your head, you shaved it or something differently. You look good. You're very prim and proper. And of course, the show wouldn't be complete without writer, actor, provocateur, husband, saint, sinner, father, grandfather, America's humble servant, but also America's teacher, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. We salute you, sir. How are you?
God bless you, sir. God bless you.
I want to welcome everybody again that's listening tonight. But right off the bat, there's almost, I got to be honest, Ben, and you brought up in a post today about how frightening it is because we don't really know who's running the country. And we have so much going on.
Yeah. Right. We don't know who's running the country. It certainly is not that cellophane. Well, people who are too young to remember cellophane, that celluloid blank figure, cartoon figure, Mr. What is his name again? I remember he's from a place that has incredibly good fried chicken, Delaware.
But on two notes,
that was a perfect impression of the president of the United States.
What, fried chicken?
No, you being like, I don't die, what that chicken?
Yeah, exactly.
They cut him off the other day as they were doing a Q&A. They cut his feed.
Yeah, Judah, I could not figure that out. What was going on? I mean, his comments were so foolish that they cut it off.
They were scared of the questions and answering.
Okay, but then here we get, Judah, to the heart of the matter. Who cut him off?
I would imagine that somebody in the White House, Ken knows about this. He cut the feed.
Dr. Jill.
Yeah, I'm sure there's.
Jill, is that what you said?
No, his wife, Dr. Jill.
Oh, right.
I'm sure right now in the White House there's somebody that walks around behind Biden with a clicker that cuts the mic, that cuts all audio, But I want to get to this quickly, Ben. There's one thing that I noticed as I was driving over here. Gas is $4 a gallon. Now, so they're offering to give people in the state of California $600 checks. That's pretty much gone with a couple fill-ups. I mean, Ben, what are we seeing right now?
Well, I don't think really we can expect much better if the president of the United States and the administration of the United States purposely lowers the supply of oil. Obviously, something's going to happen to the price. It's probably not going to go down. It'll probably go up. And so they're purposely trying to raise the price of oil and raise the price of gasoline. Now, is that in the service of environmental issues? I don't know. I think it's just idiocy. I think it's just an idiotic emblem of the environmental left that we have to do anything bad we can to the oil business. And that's whether it makes any sense at all, we have to do it.
Ken, let me ask you, that's a great point, sir. Thank you. Ken, let me ask you a question, since you're about media action and getting back at them. What the hell do we do with our governor? I mean, this is across the country that the gas prices have gone up. And in California, $4 a gallon.
Oh, sir, Judah, yeah. My dear
For you, it's $6.
I don't know where you live, frankly, but I know you live in Los Angeles. But I know that here in two blocks or 1.5 blocks from my house, it's $6 a gallon. That's a lot.
Well, you live by the gas station, just so people know.
Massage while you get the gas.
No, you do not get that.
Don't get that anymore.
You get nothing.
It's full service, but here's the thing.
That is not full. That is not full service. That is not.
Here's the thing about this gas station. It's a landmark. It's been designated a landmark. So it's in prime real estate. Yes. So they can't sell it to anything else other than a future gas station.
Right, but that would not explain the price. That's just not how economics works. But there are gas stations very close here that are just ordinary corner lots, and it's almost $6 a gallon there too. And the gas station near our house in Malibu, it's on the most absolutely plain lot you can imagine. I think it's more than $6 a gallon. And if you purposely try to raise the price of something and you're the federal government, you'll do it.
What is happening with that? What is the underlying cause of that?
What is the underlying cause of the rise in prices of gasoline? Rise in the price of oil, and some of that is caused by normal fluctuations in the world supply and demand, but some of it is caused by the fact that the market obviously anticipates that there will be a further tightening of supply because the Democrats do not want people using oil and are going to cut down on sources of oil.
Now, there's a couple of things here though too, because I know that there's kind of two distinct issues here. I think one is that California has its own sort of gas supply, right? California formulates its own gas. We have a limited number of refineries in California. I haven't heard, only because in my defense, I haven't been paying that close attention, but I haven't heard if any of California's refineries have been offline.
I don't know about that, but I know, but I may tell you this, my fellow Ben, that has all turned out to be BS. I mean, people have broken it down into what are the components of a price of a gallon of gasoline. And it turns out that the specifically California related factors are very small. And this idea about how they have to change refining systems at different seasons of the year, that's all nonsense. It's all being done in a monopolistic fashion. So if you have the gasoline company, the oil companies behaving in a monopolistic fashion, and the government behaving in a way to restrict supply, you're going to get some serious movements in price. I don't think it'll stay this high forever, but I think in the long run, the trend is very markedly up. And people say, oh, but never mind, because all the cars in the future will be electric. Where does the electricity come from?
Right.
The electricity doesn't generate itself. It has to be generated very largely by burning oil in electric power plants.
Right.
That oil isn't free.
But the second thing, though, I wanted to mention is that it was certainly the case in late January and early to mid-February. There was a whole bunch of refineries in the South that were offline because of weather. That's certainly true.
Right, but that is certainly true. But that does not. It's interesting. This is an enormously big country, and it's a country with a great many oil refining facilities. And even if you take those facilities in Louisiana and Texas offline, there's still plenty of oil coursing through the veins of this nation. And it is that would not explain it. There's just something going on here that I think has to do with consumers' expectation of future supply.
What about inflation, Ben?
Well, that is inflation. I mean,
yeah, I know. I mean, but like fears of inflation.
Well, I think we have real serious fears of inflation. That's being reflected in the interest rates. Interest rates are going up quite considerably and quite quickly. and that's a really big problem for people who want to buy houses. So, I mean, if government sets out to screw up the economy, they will succeed. They are big enough to succeed.
Yeah.
Well, two things. One is I'm selling a house in Malibu, so I hope the rates hold off another month.
Oh, you're kidding. Where's your house?
It's actually right inland. It's in a little place called Montanito.
I know where that
Saddle
is.
Peak Lodge
I
is?
know where that is. I know where that is.
Yeah, so it's right maybe 5 minutes inland on.
May I ask you a question? Why do you, if you don't mind, since we're all friends here and we're friends with our audience, I hope they're our friends. Why do you have a house in Montanito?
I've lived there for 20 years on and off. It's a wonderful, wonderful area. You can be with no traffic going down PCH. You're 35 minutes out of the west side of LA.
God bless you.
And this is right where they filmed MASH, the TV show that the kids don't remember anymore. So I could look out of my backyard and I could see miles and only a handful of homes. So
great.
So it is
That's
kind
great.
of like a kind of horsey community, but not so horsey.
It's great. God bless you. God bless you.
Beautiful, beautiful place. And the prices are now just going skyrocketing as people in Canoga Park are like, how did homeless people get into Canoga Park? And so they're willing to pay a little bit more to go.
It is a fact. There's your story. There's another story. Homeless are really becoming an interesting issue all over our glorious LA. And now they are building a train, underground, maybe it's above ground train from Koreatown, which has great barbecued beef, to the west, all the way to the ocean. I think, Judah, you follow.
I think the blue line went out. The blue line went out there. Yeah.
And it's going to be going just a few blocks from our house, and I think it's gonna bring lots and lots of homeless people wandering around. And God bless them. I hope that their lives are less miserable than they seem to be.
Yeah. No, so I mean, I got to say, I've never thought I'd be so interested in a topic about oil and gas, but this is something that's affecting.
Huge subject. Judy, you drive, and why wouldn't you be interested in it?
I mean, I was like really shocked by it. And I think people are looking at this going, and I'm being serious, as somebody, a layman like me, Ben Boychuk obviously knows more about the subject, but a layman like me, when we were buying oil during the Trump administration for $0, we have as much oil as we need in this country, right? I mean, we have excess oil, and we're not allowed to benefit from what we have, from the good deals that were made, Ben. I mean,
and we get nothing in return. I mean, that's the fascinating thing. I mean, there's so much that the Biden administration does that cannot be understood. I mean, why are we cutting off our own supply of oil? Why are we cutting off the supply of oil we get from our very good friends and neighbors, the Canadians? Why are we doing that? Why, and I'm sure Judah knows a lot more about this than I do, why are we taking in this huge number of illegal immigrants and illegal aliens? What's the good of it? I don't understand it. It's very nice as a humanitarian gesture. If they want to raise taxes and send more money to those people in Guatemala or Costa Rica or wherever they're from, it doesn't bother me. But why are we bringing them into America? In what way does it strengthen America to have all these people coming into America who might have COVID, who might have criminal records? Why are we doing this?
Diversity is our strength, man.
Very good.
Come
very
on.
good.
Come
very
on.
good.
The
Look,
rainbow colors.
I'm actually not all that worried about the gas prices because there are certain metrics that politicians get punished by more than others. Look, we saw high inflation in the late 70s, early 80s, and it wiped out some politicians, and that's why they said, okay, you can do anything, you can bring the illegals in, you can do this, you can do that, but you can't have high inflation. Gasoline prices, and it's largely because we put them on big posters as you drive by, so you get to bitch about it. I mean, nobody bitches about like, wow, the price of milk is up, because they don't have to put the price of milk outside of
That's a very good point. Very good point.
And so I'm actually a believer that, gas prices will take care of themselves. They get up a little too, somebody outside of Beverly Hills where it's gold plated window washers getting in, paying $6 for gasoline, they'll vote all the Democrats out. So that's kind of one of those issues that I'm like, that's a self-perpetuating problem. So
I for one, am looking forward to the umpteenth hearing and or investigation by the state legislature and maybe even Congress into supposed, profiteering by oil companies.
Well, but they're profiteering is what they're supposed to do.
I know.
Publicly held companies are supposed to be making
sarcastically.
Every 2 years, every 2 years or so, especially the California state legislature will haul oil company execs up into Sacramento to find out why gas prices are so high. And then somebody has to point out that, at least a third of the gas price at the pump is from state and local taxes.
But Ben, years ago, you had written a great piece, and you had written this is years ago of many great pieces, of course. But this was about that Yale. I believe it was about Yale never had to charge another student again with their endowment, and I don't think Yale has welcomed you back kindly.
Well, actually, amazingly enough, the head of the Yale endowment did write to me about that, and he said, come over to talk to me. I think he thought I was in New York. I said I'm far from New York, but they're allowed to make money. But of course, they are an odd institution because most of the money they make does not seem to me to go to the benefit of the students, but to the benefit of the faculty and the administration. That turns out to be a fantastically well-paying job, being a university teacher at a big name place like Yale, and more power to them. But it's not really.
Aren't some of these places? Aren't some of these schools like hedge funds with the school?
I think they are. They sort of are. They sort of are.
Well, when you look at some of their endowments, it's like the kids have little to do with any of this at this point.
Yeah, very little. They're coddled children, and I guess I don't know. That's America's future. Coddled children here in America, hardworking children in China and Korea, and we know where the future lies.
And Ben, the reason I brought up that article is I'm looking at the governor right now as our gas prices are going up, saying, give us a little bit of this endowment that we've invested in, as a country that we've invested in, and cut the gas prices just a bit. Give us this stuff that we invested in. On that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's listening on YouTube, that downloads our podcast all over on Apple, Stitcher, all the great places. Also, please subscribe to our newsletter, benstein.substack.com. Ben Boychik got it right. And
outstanding.
I want to thank everybody, of course. And of course, we're joined tonight by Ken LaCour from the Media Action Network, Ben Boychik from American Greatness, and of course, America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. But the next subject I want to talk about, Ben Boychik, please talk about it.
Well, so we're about to lose our elections in this country, it looks like, because the House of Representatives has passed H.R. 1, the For the People Act, the ill-named For the People Act, which would, we were talking just a little bit at the top of the show. If you just tuned in, you missed it, but that's okay. About essentially what this bill would do is nationalize all of the shenanigans from November. So it would do away with state voter ID laws. It would basically make mandatory no excuse mail-in balloting. It would essentially legalize ballot harvesting across the country.
Felons.
Yes, felons. That's right. That's a big one. It would do away.
And could you explain what ballot harvesting is? Because I did not know it was until recently, and Judah explained it to me.
Yeah, so great question. Yeah, because it's a relatively recent phenomenon. And essentially what it would allow parties to, or third parties, or any parties, to collect ballots from individuals. I mean, they can, like in California, you can literally go door to door and say, have you voted today? Oh, you haven't? Well, I happen to have a ballot here for you if you'd like to fill it out. I may have actually even filled it out before I got here. Or if you've got a ballot, I can pick it up. There's no secure chain of custody for these things.
You could go to cemeteries, mental institutions, sure, nursing homes, and it's all good.
It's all good. And so all of these practices. And what's going to be really interesting to see is the lawsuits that are coming, because the Constitution very clearly states that states get to decide the time, place, and manner of holding elections. And so what Congress is really doing here is usurping the authority of the states. And so
He's doing. Well, I'm sorry. What was the verb?
Usurping the authority of the states, and so which is, yeah, yes, they have some means of doing that. We do have a Voting Rights Act in this country, but it's going to be interesting to see. But if it holds up, we're in big trouble because all of that goofiness that took place in those swing states in November would be writ large. And
it's a very scary situation. I was just discussing with Judah as the show was getting set up, the whole future of the democratic process in this country, small d democratic process, is breathtakingly scary. And Mr. Trump said this is a very important election. He wasn't kidding. This really was an important election, and wow, it's getting more and more important. I was just explaining. I think I was talking to you on the phone, the car phone, Judah, that there's this new proposal by a representative from Texas, Mrs. Lee, I think is her name, and
Biden got her name wrong, so you don't have to feel bad.
What? I'm sorry?
Biden actually got her name wrong, so you don't have to feel bad.
Okay, well, I think her name is Mrs. Lee. Anyway,
yeah,
right? 1, 2, 3. Look at Mr. Lee. Anyway, and the she is saying that she wants like 40,000, something like that, something roughly like that, troops in D.C. permanently to guard against the possibility of right-wing insurrections. Well, there haven't been any right-wing insurrections, and this is just a Democrat power play, a very, very serious, frightening one, to have a garrison state in the capital of the United States. That is very scary. I think people like those of us here gathered around the Zoom or whatever this process is called, we are seeing really the last days of a great, great, great republic.
It's frightening, Ken LaCourte. And what do we do? I mean, how do we punch back on this one?
It's interesting because I saw that the DC cops were asking for another 2 months of the guards being there. It is a troublesome thing. I'm not quite sure exactly how we punch back at that one. Yeah, I don't have any idea on that one. We just kind of point it out. We kind of keep pointing to the fences and say,
may I make a respectful question, I guess? I was watching over the last couple of nights a very, very interesting A&E, not A&E, but NPR or something, a biography of Governor George Wallace of Alabama. And when he started out, everything looked like it was on the side of the segregationists. It didn't look like they could ever be pushed back or beaten. But by relentless campaigning, eventually the tide was turned. I don't understand why we don't have people marching all around the courthouses of America every day, and I'll be glad to be one of them, saying we beg and pray for justice. We beg and pray for please God, please Americans, give us back our Constitution. Maybe eventually just a little thing like that will help.
That's a good point, but Ben, also you forgot to bring up the one caveat in that is I was reading in Breitbart that there's the Trump law in this bill, which is if you run for president, you have to divest yourself. I believe you divest yourself and your family from all your holdings, which I find hysterical coming from Nancy Pelosi, who has made
really hilarious.
Hilarious. I mean, these Congress people and these senators who are literally becoming bankrolls, becoming banks while they serve. And none of them have divested themselves from their companies. It's frightening, Ben. You're right, Ken. I mean,
no, we're seeing if we don't do something every day from now on, we're going to see the end of America in our children's lifetime.
Look, the Democrats are very good at changing the rules to suit themselves, and we saw that in Florida with the Felon Act. We're seeing that here a lot. And all of this stuff is if we can change the rules on how you count votes, how you're allowed to vote, how all of those things. So look, the only slim read that we have right now is a I'll call it a 5-4 Supreme Court, since the Chief Justice seems to be a little bit bipolar, and I think that we're going to have to bring a lot of stuff to that. That's what we have going in the next 2 years, and then praying, of course, for overreach. I mean, outside of the Monica Lewinsky years, every single off-year election, I believe in my sentient lifetime, the party in power has taken it on the nose in off-year elections. So we better unify, come to find the things that we're upset about the most, bring those to the average person's thought, and push that one.
I think we've got it. I love that word unify. And it is true that we don't control any of the major networks. It is true that we don't control any of the major newspapers except for the edit page of the Wall Street Journal. But there is this thing called the internet. We can all write for it all the time. If we just deluge it with good content that makes sense and appeals to people's senses and their heartstrings, maybe we'll make a little progress.
Okay, I want to bring up what Ted Zimmerman brings up in the chat, and it's something we've spoken about, which essentially is that Republicans are a bunch of pussies. Okay, the fact that Republicans aren't screaming from, and excuse my language to people that are listening, including my mother, that people aren't, that this is where Mitch McConnell and all of these people, it's so frustrating. Get on a blowhorn on Capitol Hill, Ben. Like you said, sometimes, you need people, screaming for you to come and do these things. There is zero Republican leadership right now in the Senate. Zero. Mitch McConnell is a shell, is an empty vessel right now, that this is allowed to be going on, and Republicans aren't doing everything they can to fight this. Is frightening.
I'm curious to know, how do you know he isn't doing everything he can to fight this?
Do you hear him?
Let me ask a question. What can a guy with 49 votes do?
I'm sorry. Ken?
What can a guy with 49 votes do?
Well, he does have 49. Oh, but he might have somebody actually asked this, will it pass in the Senate? And that's a very interesting question, because they don't know about Joe Manchin or Sinema. Those two are the flip ones that Ben Boychuk in the Senate, right? Those two could possibly vote no on this.
Same with the stimulus. But you really think, what they should have maybe thought about doing, and maybe they are doing it. I don't know. I don't have any special insight on this, but if I were somebody with juice in the U.S. Senate,
you say Jews?
Juice.
Okay.
Not juice. If I were somebody with some pull in the Senate, I might be talking to Joe Manchin every single day, saying to him, for example, well, if you were to switch parties, we could provide you with
buy you a house in the Hamptons,
chairmanships, maybe a high leadership position, maybe.
But how did so? Yeah, I think that this is a little bit of Trumper craziness going on right now. So a year ago, Mitch McConnell was the badass of the U.S. Senate.
I never liked
his nickname. Wait a second. His nickname online was Cocaine Mitch. He was jamming through, in a good way, Ben.
Yeah.
He was jamming through judge after judge after judge. He was the guy. I mean, look, let's be honest. Merrick Garland probably should be a Supreme Court justice, and he effed him over hardcore. I mean, Mitch McConnell was kind of the equivalent of Don Corleone of the Senate. All right. That was up. That was where it was until the whole Trump stuff, and Trump being like, this whole thing was stolen from me, and Mitch didn't come on. And now Mitch is seen as like this soft, he's seen as John Boehner. And
I happen to agree with you. I happen to agree with you. I had this conversation with a friend before the show. Sorry, it wasn't you, Ben, but it was somebody else. And where I was saying about Mitch McConnell did great with Merrick Garland. He took a risk, but what was the real risk? It was like the Jeff Sessions risk, right? As coming out as the first senator to vote for Trump. You're from Alabama. There was no risk to it. So the risk was with not allowing the judge in. Wasn't much of a risk with Merrick Garland, because he knew. Yeah.
I'm gonna play Larry Klayman's role and say, I don't think,
I'm suing you.
No, I don't think a lot of these judges have been all that great. And I'm going to go farther than that and say that I don't think I don't think Amy Coney Barrett has covered herself in glory in her short time on the Supreme Court.
Why? What has she done that you've been disappointed with?
Well, I'll give you one just from today. A First Amendment, a FOIA case where she essentially ruled that I think it was the Environmental Protection Agency has a right to keep concealed there's a deliberative privilege in regulatory agencies. So we can find out certain things after certain rules get made, but we can't find out how they get made. And of course, I mean, and just that was just from today. I mean, of course, she was on the wrong side on the Pennsylvania vote case a couple of weeks ago, and Kavanaugh was sided with the wrong side on the Pennsylvania vote case too. And so I think we'll just have to wait and see. But Klayman has said many times, and I wasn't sure he was right at first, but now I'm beginning to come around to his view that a lot of these federal judges, these Federalist Society guys, they're not all that great.
Well, I mean, Larry Klayman's book was called Whores. And
it goes with, yes, it was like we're contractually obligated to mention horse.
It sort of sums it up. But on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody in the YouTube chat. We are reading and seeing your comments. I want to thank everybody, but even if you're in the chat, I beg of you to please still download the show on iTunes. It's very helpful for us. And of course, go to Media Action Network, read LaCourte News, go to American Greatness. Read their news, go to American Spectator, read their news. I beg of you to go to all these different places. Everybody could use your support. And I want to welcome back, of course, Ken LaCourte, Ben Boychuk, Ben Stein, but I want to get to a topic Ben has been writing about for years. It's near and dear to his heart. It's something, and it's something decades, and it's something Ken brought up the other night too, which is and I sent you this article. It's city student passes 3 classes in 4 years, ranks near top half of the class with a 0.13 GPA. This is in Baltimore, Maryland.
Ben. Yeah. Well, okay, I'm going to reference something else. Judah, the other day I was watching a panel show, and there was several people talking about talking to a college student audience about why is America the greatest country in the world. And everybody was giving pretty nice answers. And then there's some guy, is the name Jeff Daniels, right, Judah? Some actor said,
Jeff Daniels is an actor, Dumb and Dumber.
He said, what did you say, Dumb and Dumber?
He was in that movie, yeah.
Okay, anyway, he said, America isn't the greatest country in the world. It's very high in illiteracy, very high in rates of incarceration, very high in rates of homicide, very high in rates of single-parent households, and on with a very depressing litany of the problems America has compared with other industrialized countries like Japan, Denmark, Germany, France, Italy. And I was just furious at him and furious at the moderators of the program because they did not point out that this problem is because America is the only major industrialized country that has a very large number of blacks. None of these other countries have large numbers of blacks. If you took the blacks out of the calculations, the results would be totally different.
Yeah,
the blacks have very, very, very high rates of incarceration, very, very high rates of illiteracy, very, very, very high rates of murder and homicide. And their situation is entirely different from the rest of America. Not entirely different, but very different. It's heart-rending, as my wife would say, that this is true. And I would very much like to see whatever can be done to improve their situation in life. But it is just not true that America as a whole is as bad as Jeff Daniels was saying. We have a real serious racial crisis in America. The black people in this country, and to a somewhat lesser extent, Hispanic people in this country, are just getting left way, way behind by themselves. They're not, nobody's beating them with billy clubs, making them not study. Nobody's beating them with billy clubs, making them knock up their girlfriends and then leave. The black population of this country is just in terrible shape. It would be wonderful and well worth any size investment to improve things. But that is the essence of the problem. It's not America itself. It is a segment of America.
That was 100% true and 100% ballsy, because I mean, it is, when you look at the numbers, I remember looking around one time when I was cruising around, just seeing what maybe open carry with firearms might do to murder rates. And I was looking at a couple of Texas cities, and one city was like 5 times higher in murder rates than the others. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? And when it came down to it, it was Black and African Americans kill each other and are victims of homicide 600% higher than the average white person. So you always see those stats of like, here's Europe murder rate and here's America. Well, it's kind of like, here's Europe rate and here's white America, like right hanging in with like the Netherlands. There's 1 or 2. And then here's Black America, Hispanic, whites, and then Asians are all seem to be pretty cool. So you're 100% right on that. I think all of our incarceration rates are a little higher, even with whites are much higher than a lot of the rest of the world. But we're Americans. We're ballsy. We got guns. We said fuck you to the last countries that held us. So we're going to go to jail occasionally. But you're 100% right. We definitely have a problem in America, and I would say that it's the problem that nobody's been able to come up with a good answer to, because the left's answer is let's shut down on police force. Let's give more money to Black Lives Matter. All the things that are not going to help that group of people. Conservatives, and me too, I don't have a great solution for them. I mean, it's easy to be like, well,
there is no great, Ken, my
like,
dear friend. Again, Ken, we all know there is no solution. There's no easy solution to this problem. There's a solution, but it cannot be legislated from on high. It has to be done by the efforts of the individual. I would like to give you an example, if I may respectfully do so.
Please.
I'm old. I'm the oldest person on this panel by a lot. And I remember very well when people used to come, the parents of people who I went to elementary school with would come back from fighting in Korea in the Korean War. And they would say the Koreans are the most screwed up, pathetic people in the world. They can't do anything right. They're really stupid. They're a mess. Then the war ended and the Korean people pulled themselves together and they mandated very strict studying, hard work. And suddenly, wham, Korea went from nothing to being a gigantic industrial and scientific powerhouse, a gigantic one. It's astounding to see the progress that the Korean people have made. Why? Because they worked like sons of bitches. They worked really, really, really hard. That's how that happened. It's happening right now all over Southeast Asia. And people can do it. And I have no doubt that the African Americans could do it too. Nobody is telling them they have to work, and their parents aren't telling them. Somebody's got to tell them, and it has to be, basically, it's got to be themselves, that if they want the beautiful things in life, they've got to work with them. There's no magic wand that Mrs. Pelosi or Mrs. Kamala Harris can wave over them to make them successful. They have to work. They can do it. We have many rich, successful Black people that I see at the restaurants in Beverly Hills. They got there by working. It can be done, but somebody's got to explain. It's got to be by work, not by magic.
It is so sad that message is not the message that you as a typical Black kid are going to hear today. What you're going to hear is you're being held down because of your color.
Right.
They're going to put a knee on your neck. You're this and that. And they don't want to hear from me. They don't want to hear from you.
They absolutely don't. And I see this all. I think I've told this story on our wonderful program several times. I had the great pleasure many years ago of being a ghostwriter for the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I had the great pleasure of going to see Reverend Jackson speak at a number of events for young Black people. And he would say the same thing over and over again. You march against racism all you want. I'll be right there next to you holding a placard. You march against police injustice all you want. I'll be right there behind you. You do anything you want complaining about your treatment as a minority, and I will go to jail with you. I'll do anything with you to help you. But if you learn how to wire a house as an electrician, if you learn how to plumb a house for plumbing, if you learn how to put on a roof, you will always be able to send your children to school, have a decent family life, have a nice house and a car and a pool, and I'll be right there with you.
Well, I think you both are raising a great point, and I think the biggest question we could ask in this thing is, as they're constantly talking about systemic racism, there is a systemic issue. It's the Democrats constantly, basically we've all, have you seen A Bronx Tale? There's that scene where he's saying, you never pay somebody too much that they don't need you, and you never need to pay somebody too little that they don't want you, something to that effect. And I'm paraphrasing. And that's really what the welfare system and all of these things have set up. The Democrats have absolutely rigged that system. That what's the point to a lot of them? What's the point? They're getting enough to live and not complain. And
right. The Democrats have rigged the system to completely deprive people of the motivation to work. I mean, it's a fascinating thing. I have a number of Black people who work for me in connection with properties, a little tiny bit of commercial property that I own, my wife and I own, and they are always saying, "How do you Jews do it?" And I always say the same thing, the same way you're doing it, by working. It's not a mystery. It's not a magic trick. It's by working.
And I want to say the greatest lie, and Ken, we've all brought this up. We're white, and I'm Jewish, and Ben's Jewish, and we can talk about this. You know what? It's okay for us to talk about this. Sorry, Ken?
No, I don't remember what I said.
No, but I'm just saying, yeah.
I've been listening to this intently, and I agree mostly, and I dissent in part with some of the things that I've heard. My friend Lance Izumi, who's a senior fellow at the Pacific Research Institute, has written a couple of books called Not As Good As You Think, in which he compared the best public school districts in the United States, places like Massachusetts and very rich parts of California and elsewhere around the country, to other countries around the world. And our best in the United States comes nowhere near the best in places like Sweden, Norway, Asia, South Korea, Japan. We have, over the past 40 years, since the early 1980s, when everybody got excited about school reform with the release of the report called A Nation at Risk. And this report came out under the auspices. I actually think it came out before Bill Bennett was secretary, but it came out, and there was great alarm about how terrible our schools were doing. And we've poured literally hundreds of billions of dollars into public education over the past 40 years. And more than that, since the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which was passed in the mid-1960s under Lyndon Johnson. And every metric has gone down, not just among Black students, but the achievement gap has remained very, very wide. But the fact is, we have done an exquisite job of dumbing down our curriculum across the board. And we've fallen terribly in terms of international comparisons. Now, some people in the YouTube's comments have said, get rid of the teachers' unions. That would be great. Get rid of the teachers' unions, but you still got the curriculum. And the curriculum isn't made necessarily exclusively by the teachers' unions. The curriculum is made by people who are often elected to office with the help of teachers' union money. But the problem is a lot bigger and weirdly ideological, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to resolve than just a few things here and there. And
sir, believe me, sir, nobody thinks it's going to be anything but incredibly difficult. My humble, fat old self was in a movie which I think is an emblem of exactly what the problem is. A very, very successful and wonderful movie called Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where I played an economics teacher. And it's the joke, of course, being I am an economist, in fact, and was a teacher for a long time. And the hero of the movie was not a guy who studied a lot. It was not a guy who had a part-time job and helped earn money to support his family. He was a rich kid who goofed off and thought of all kinds of clever ways to goof off and not do anything meaningful in school. And that was a wildly successful movie. It's still wildly successful.
I think I might have heard of it.
Yes, exactly. And if I may say so, is that mindset that still dominates American youth culture today.
It's
Let
actually
me take the opposite. Let me take the opposite thing. While you guys were talking, I was looking for a map that I couldn't find, and it was a map that showed the
That's sort of funny, by the way. I got to tell you, it's a map you couldn't find. But go on.
The GNP of the GNP of Georgia, which is like the lowest of all 50 states.
No, Mississippi.
Gotta be Mississippi.
Then it was Mississippi. I'll find it for next week. And then it showed the rest of the world that was higher or lower than Mississippi. And what you found was there was like, I don't know, 15 countries out of the rest of the world that was higher GNP than our lowest slog. And the rest of the world was far behind that. And so I don't know. Somehow I always hear our high schools suck, but everybody's coming here for college education. So what happens from 12th grade to the first grade of college that our systems went? Now, maybe it was leaving certain kids behind. Maybe it was professors and educators like to make up bullshit figures to show how they need more money. I mean, that was the problem that the teachers union did for 10 years. They kept saying, our schools suck. We need more money. And finally people said, well, the schools suck. Maybe it's your problem. So I'm not convinced of any of what you guys were saying.
With all due respect, Ken, my dear friend, the reason that this country's, even our poorest state, like Mississippi, Alabama, would way outperform the production and capacities of almost every other country is that the rest of the states are so incredibly successful and prosperous. I mean, they are so successful and prosperous that they pull up every state, even the lowest ranking states. I mean, the GDP per capita of Florida. Well, I'm sorry.
California pulls up Mississippi's GNP?
Gigantically. California is a gigantically prosperous state. Connecticut's a gigantic. I mean, there are a lot of gigantically prosperous states. They're so prosperous that they pull up the GDP or the GDP of everything else. I mean, this is a very, very, very rich country. There's no two ways about it. This is a fantastically rich country. People in the rest of the world have no idea how rich this country is. And young people in this country have no idea how rich this country is. They just have no clue. This is a very, very, very rich country.
Our universities have succeeded internationally in part because until relatively recently, the research that has occurred in American universities has sort of led the world in research and development, and they've led to innovations in manufacturing and things like that. Of course, now that we're getting woke math and woke physics, who knows how long that's going to last?
2 + 2 = you're a racist,
right? Yeah, that's right. But really, I mean, so much of the success of our universities, and the University of California remains preeminent in the world in no small part because it attracts people from around the globe. Our public school system in California does not attract people from around the globe and hasn't been really worth a damn since about 1970, I think. That's when you start seeing SAT scores go into the toilet. Of course, we're getting rid of the SAT, so we won't have to worry about that anymore. But that, I mean, you really had until I really think the turn was the Elementary and Secondary Education Act in the 60s, when the federal government really began inserting itself in state and local school funding.
Well, I guess there's nobody better to ask about that than Ben Stein.
Well, I can say I think the turn it was roughly at that time. Oh, thank you very much. But the turn certainly was when we lowered standards. I mean, we at a certain point we said to kids, we love you anyway, and you're good kids, and we're not going to be mad at you if you don't do well. And we each one of you is an individual, and you've got precious qualities, and we're not going to hold you to account. Whereas in Korea, they're beating the crap out of kids who don't do well in school, so everybody does well in school.
but again, I just don't want to. I can come up with numbers and people can come up with numbers to say anything. But if you've got some weird frickin' cancer that nobody knows how to cure, and you had to go to one country in the world, what country are you going to go to?
Always the U.S. Always.
If you're like, hey,
unless you're Rand Paul, right? Didn't you go to Canada for something?
If you're like, gentlemen, I'm giving you $1 million. You can go to any country in the world to start a business and be successful.
Right.
Where would you go to?
Right. Absolutely.
If you're going to any country to say, hey, what country, if we all go to World War IV, are you going to be safe in? What country?
Sure. With the great Ken, our brother, none of us is disagreeing with you at all.
I think we're
agreeing with you
too much.
What?
I think we're shitting on America.
We're not shitting on it at all. We're saying there are basically two
Americas. It was Ben Boychuk.
Well, there are two Americas. There's the America of non-African American people.
Oh, I get that.
They're doing great. Right. Not doing great, but they're doing fairly well. They're the Americans, the African Americans, and they are in terrible shape. 100%. What do we do for them? That's
100% agree with all of that.
You got an amen, Ken, in the YouTube section. Listen, there's not, you walk around the supermarket with Ben Stein, and there's nobody that walks around the supermarket that looks at everything and goes, you can't get this. This is the greatest country in the world. That literally walks around the aisles of a supermarket and says, look how good, look in wonder, and look how good we have it. And that's wherein lies the problem. Right. This isn't us crapping on this country right now. And Ben brought this up in the post about the show, as they're doing this systemic racism. At the same time, they're systematically destroying our values. They're systematically destroying our past, our future, and everything that makes this country great. And as Ben Stein has brought up, do we have flaws? Do we have nicks? Do we have warts? Do we have all those things? 100%. But man, this country is great, and they are trying to tear it down. They are trying to rip the fabric and just destroy it right now.
Right.
And Ken LaCourte, this is where your thing of not complaining and fighting back comes in, because this is where we need solutions.
We got to go nub some people up.
Look at this.
No, look, you're 100% right. And it's so sad that our education system has raised a group of kids who are just convinced that we are so screwed up on A to Z. You're just like, we want to keep it great. We want to, keep it great again. I hate to say those phrases because evidently that's a race crime now. But yeah, 100%.
We have got, okay. Then here we have a beautiful starting position. America works if you work it. Judah and I belong, I won't say Judah. I belong to a 12-step program that says it works if you work it. America works if you work it. America works if you work at your studies, if you work at your business, if you work at taking care of your family. It works incredibly well. Unbelievably well, mind-bogglingly well. If you just spend all your time criticizing and mocking and belittling it, it doesn't work at all. I have a household here. It's got my wifey and me in it, and has many, many, many people who work for us. My wife's not in good health, so we have quite a few nurses, and my wife's a saint. And they're all from foreign countries, and they work. And they come here from the Philippines, generally speaking, and they say, holy smoke, we're having steak again tonight. We're having fresh filet of salmon again tonight. Only millionaires in our country get to have that. And you have that every night. And they are inspired to work very, very hard and to go to school part-time while they're working for us. And that's what is making America great still. If people could say, instead of saying, oh, Ben Stein has this and I don't, we hate America, instead of that saying, how did he get that? I probably won't have it much longer, but whatever. How did he get that? Let's see what he does and see how he got there. Look, I often think, I'm sure everyone on this panel thinks, my grandfather, God bless his soul, he was a cavalryman in the Spanish-American War. God bless his soul. Then he studied and got a job as a tool and die maker. My father was a stone solid genius, worked like a No, actually, he didn't work very hard, but he was very, very smart. My mother worked very, very hard. Got a graduate degree in an era when women
I thought
barely.
you were going to say your mother
graduated from high
worked him.
school.
I thought you were going to say your mother worked him hard.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly right. And anyway, that's how it's done. And somehow the people who learn that get ahead. We have housekeepers, two Hispanic housekeepers, 5 days a week. They have their own swimming pool. Now, in what other country in the world would a houseworker have a home with her own swimming pool?
Wait, 2 housekeepers? That's
It's
a
big
lot.
house.
Oh, come on.
Well, one for upstairs, one for downstairs.
Is that what it is? Is it does
I
one
won't be
cook
able to
another
afford it. The
clean?
next thing you'll be reading about me will be me entering bankruptcy court, so don't get jealous about it.
But I want to ask you all a question, and this is I really struggle with this. I get into an argument with a different friend constantly about this. I have a belief, and I shared this at the end of the show. And everybody, thank you for the prayers. My father's out of the hospital; he's doing very well.
God bless him.
And my father always had this belief, while I was drinking, that as long as his son was alive, there was a chance. And that's how I look at America. As long as America's alive, there's a chance. Do you guys believe that most people are sitting at home and, are looking at this absolute insanity, and they're scared to say it out loud, but are looking at this absolute chaos that we have going on right now by the left, where Ben said 2 + 2 = racist, and they're saying to themselves, what the hell is going on? And are terrified like the rest of us. Like it's only really 10% that's terrifying the rest of us 90%.
Are you asking me? Because
I'm asking all of you guys. I'm asking all of you guys.
Way smaller than that. It's a horribly concentrated group on the news channels and in the Democrat Party that is whipping up everybody else. I mean, if 1 or 2 guys have control of the mass media, those 2 guys can do a hell of a lot of damage, and they're doing it.
Ken, what do you think?
What I think is we're in an extreme part of the pendulum, and the pendulum swings back and forth over multiple years. And sometimes you get worried that pendulum cycle will get broken. And I believe when censorship comes in, or when one side gets to choose the rules, as Ben Boychuk was talking about, and you can change the rules to make your side so that it's heads I win, tails you lose, those are serious, serious dangers. Other than that, and we've had a good 200 and close to 50-year history of there will be people fighting for their cause, and we've got a pretty good system in, and sometimes your side wins, the other side they win. And as long as we're playing within those rules, and we're not changing the rules of the game so that, again, whether it's an election, whether it's the upstream censorship, those things bother me more than anything we've talked about. Elections or gas prices, or that, to me, that's all downstream from some of that stuff. If we can fight on an open playing field, America will be great.
Thank you very much for that. What about you, Ben?
I'm reading a book right now, just out.
You
landed
wrote a
on
book?
No, I'm reading one. I landed on my front doorstep on yesterday, and I'm about halfway through it. It's called Fears of a Setting Sun by Dennis Rasmussen. And it's about the disillusionment among the founders near the ends of their lives, with the exception maybe of James Madison. And they all believed that the experiment wouldn't last. And it wouldn't last much beyond their lifetimes. And everybody from George Washington to Alexander Hamilton to John Adams to Thomas Jefferson and a whole bunch of other lesser lights didn't think the experiment would endure longer than maybe 10 or 20 years before they had to do something else.
And they were all wrong.
And maybe they were partly right. Maybe the Republic didn't last in the ways that they imagine it would last. Maybe it had to adapt and evolve over time. Or maybe we somehow figured out a way to muddle through, or maybe it is coming to an end, as we were talking about before, as Ben Stein pointed out earlier.
Or maybe let us know when you finish the book.
Well,
maybe let's look at it this way. It did come to an end from 1861 to 1865. We had a terribly bloody civil war, or more properly stated, war between the states. So it did come very close to coming to an end. And it really, in a way, it really did come to an end. The biggest lie ever told by a president was Abraham Lincoln saying that we were going to have government of the people and by the people and for the people. Because if we'd had that, the South would have been allowed to secede. So, but we have managed to muddle through, and we still have an incredibly, unbelievably great country. It's incredibly, unbelievably great. I would love to see Mr. Biden say that this is an incredibly great country. Whatever I do, I'm going to make sure we keep it. We're not going to tear it apart in the name of any ideology.
Amen. That is never going to happen, but because they would cut his feed. But Ben Boychuk, if you could tell people the name of that book again, because it sounds very interesting.
It's called Fears of a Setting Sun by Dennis Rasmussen.
It's part of Ben's Ben Boychuk Book of the Month Club recommendation for everybody listening to the show. Ken, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wonder, and this we don't have enough time to talk about it tonight, but I wonder if old men, as we age, start to get more excessively worried about things like that. I remember talking to other elderly people who were like, the country's going to crap. And I've heard that from old man to old man 5 years, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And it's something that maybe it's a longer psychological conversation that we can have next Thursday.
That's a very, very excellent point, and I appreciate it.
And I look forward to that conversation.
And I appreciate it.
And I look forward to that conversation. And I think it's important to note that because we'll be here Saturday night. It's our libertarian hour, but next Tuesday night we will be discussing, because Ben, I know this frightened you last night when we were talking about how certain states seem to be seceding from the Union at this point. And I know that frightened you when I brought that up. But these are realities of what's going on right now. I want to thank everybody in the YouTube chat for listening to us. I want to remind everybody to the newsletter, benstein.substack.com. The podcast, please download the podcast on Apple or wherever you can download the podcast. And tell your friends, tell everybody, just download it. We love you. We're honored that you join us every Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday night. And Ken LaCourte, please tell people where they can find you.
www.mediaactionnetwork.com. Sign up.
Ben Boychuk.
American Greatness, www.amgreatness.com.
And you can find Ben Stein at Ben Stein on Parler. And people get back to Parler.
And also the American Spectator. Don't forget.
I was about to say Spectator. And you can find them at spectator.org. Go read his stuff. It's amazing. Ben, do you want to take us out in song, or do you need to jump?
I can do it. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go, oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down to Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
White men dancing. The world according to Ben Stein. Peace out. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you Saturday night. Thank you, Ken LaCourte. Thank you, Ben Boychuk. And thank you, America's humble servant and America's teacher, Benjamin Jeremy Stein.
Love you guys.
God bless you.